guys, welcome to one of the final bonus episodes for Transistor. Essentially, as you can see on screen, I have every single ability plus a little extra as part of New Game Plus. But every single function that you get, so the main, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 16 functions. Of course it's 16, it's all about programming. I now have every single function complete. As part of that, I thought we'd go through the 16 functions in a bit more depth and detail about the people behind those functions. So,
you got on the Camerata shortlist. More than just a name to them now.
So here we have Red. Red, her background, was ranked in the top percentile of Cloudbank's contemporary performing artists for 5 years. Red demonstrated early interest in music despite studying at Traverson Hall. Traverson grew many of the city's most ambitious civic planners, though Red spent the majority of her time developing the Academy's Nassian art program and was the first on record to select 2 non-traditional disciplines. Records indicate she was reluctant to explain, citing personal reasons. She remained reticent even after gaining the spotlight, and when asked about her past and influences, would often say her work spoke for itself. She did admit, however, that she never wrote her music with the intent to stir controversy. In her career, to appreciate the impact of Red's music, consider first the current state of Cloudbank's social climate and how it evolved over the past 2 decades, when an altercation finally erupted in the crowd during one of her performances. It was the first such incident in 4 years. It escalated to a point where administrators were summoned to the scene, as one of the suspects was banned from the premises. He accused Red of being an instigator and provocateur. Red later stated it was in this moment that she fully understood the potent effect her music had on people. She decided to have certain precautions from that point, receding from the spotlight to compose new material in relative privacy. Rumors swirled, then once she finally re-emerged, trouble followed. In the disappearance of Red, the Camerata found her one night since the crowds dispersed to one of her performances. They had reason to believe that she would be alone, rehearsing said new material, but she was not alone. The presence of another individual disrupted aspects of the Camerata's plan for that night. Red survived the incident, becoming separated from the Camerata due to these unforeseen events on their part. Although her trace remains intact, partial transfer did occur, including transfer of ownership status of something the Camerata believed theirs. That would be the Transistor. Age 27, female, music linguistics, reason cited declined, trace status intact. And now we have...
Yours truly. Guess I'm not supposed to be here. Not that anyone else is. So they got any dirt on me?
So, due to background error, subject background data corrupted from during integration, reasons unknown. So because he took the hit for Red, the data is unrecoverable. Exceptions. Recovered data indicates subject had no selections on rare record. There is a remote possibility, less than 5%, that information is inaccurate due to data corruption. In the more likely event that the information is valid, subject by definition cannot be matched with census data. 0% of Cloudbank willingly chose non-selection. Disappearance. Timestamp on subject's integration coincides with timestamps of previous authenticated user relinquished access and control. Although subject's data was corrupted during integration, nonetheless, such data has its uses, and consequently derived a suitable function. Suitable's trace data remains disjointed and cannot be recovered. Age unknown, gender unknown, selections declined, reasons cited, still figuring things out, trace status non-recoverable. And that's Breach. And that's the guy, the narrator in the Blade. Essentially, he's completely gone. Lillian Platt. One of the preeminent scientific minds at Cloudbank, Miss Lillian Platt was one of the youngest ever individuals to be selected as chairwoman of the OVC board. Under her leadership, the number of OVC terminals in Cloudbank more than doubled, and the quality of the broadcast strengthened more than 4-fold. However, she then became the youngest ever individual to leave the post, as she tendered a resignation in less than 2 years to pursue extracurricular interests in private conversations. Several of her former colleagues indicated that Miss Platt left following the sudden disappearance of a close personal friend, Mr. Maximilian Starzi, who, according to official OVC transcripts, decided one day to move to the country. Actions taken. Personal reviews show Miss Platt was preoccupied with certain rumors and urban legends concerning an unusual phenomenon cited in the northwestern corner of the city, and possible connections between this and the rash disappearance during the past 12 months. For undisclosed reasons, she did not wish to involve the authorities. Her access to privileged OVC information may have contributed to her decision. Other records show she engaged in clandestine discussions with individuals claiming to have knowledge of the circumstances surrounding her friend's disappearance. She arranged to meet with them one night on an unmarked port near Goldwalk Bay, leading to her disappearance. Miss Platt never learned the truth about her vanished friend, although in a brief moment she did learn the truth about the unusual phenomenon to the Camerata. Miss Platt was more of a meddler than an opportunity, one of scarce few who held some knowledge of their movements. When the time came, they made sure they were nowhere near her last known location. According to OVC, Miss Platt has been missing for more than 2 weeks, and the trail has gone cold. Incidents of foul play have occurred less than once a year on average for the last 10 years, but authorities have not ruled it out in this case. Age 33, gender female, selections, physics and negotiation, reasons cited, problem solving, trace status, integrated. Jaunt. Preston Moyle. Cloudbank's racing circuit never knew the likes of Preston Moyle, who shattered speed records with the aplomb for 4 years straight, credited with popularizing the sport of 1200cc racing. Mr. Moyle gained celebrity not merely for his exceptional riding ability, but also because he built his motorbikes with his own hands. Ever the thrill seeker, Mr. Moyle became known for seeking up Cloudbank's remotest strips of road. Then one day, Mr. Moyle was altogether gone, having left all his personal effects behind, save for his fastest bike. Freewheeling. Tracking systems on his bikes indicate that Mr. Moyle headed northwest across the canals late one night, averaging speeds 228% faster than the common standard. He surely was aware that the north and west corner of Cloudbank was offline pending investigation. This was likely the appeal. Having his very own abandoned part of town to race through on his custom bike was Preston Moyle's dream, and the reality lived up to that dream. Judging by the volume of Mr. Moyle's laughter recorded by his bike, however, the recording stopped abruptly. Disappearance. OVC first declared Mr. Moyle's absence in a full 5 days later. So sure were his associates that he would return like always. His close friends did not worry more than the usual for 3 days. But for each subsequent day, the worry increased, an average of 84%. This quotient proceeded to spread to the numerous fans of Mr. Moyle's illustrious career, although administrators barred any appeals to search for him in an offline district. File complete. Jaunt. Probably one of my favourite skills, so thank you, Moyle.
Shawsburg was out of control. Thought the admins put him away.
Shomo Shasberg. Background. Considering the most elusive entertainer in Cloudbank by 12% of the population, Mr. Shomer Shansberg earned his reputation through numerous absurd public pranks and other daring or ill-advised feats. Thus he earned the nickname The Magician from his many thousands of fans, and enjoyed executing highly unusual, unscheduled performances in Cloudbank's most bustling neighborhoods. His acts grew more ambitious over time, culminating in his promise to skydrop into a restricted region of Goldwalk and walk right out, escaping administrative detection. Skydropped. After constructing his personal glider, Mr. Shasberg sailed forth one evening from a high-rise rooftop to the delight of thousands of onlookers at ground level. Onlookers lost visibility of him as he flew into the dense fog hanging over Goldwalk. Though the cheering continued for more than 40 minutes, Mr. Shasberg meanwhile completed his skydrop very much as planned. What he did not expect was that several individuals were waiting for him where he touched down. Disappearance. The Camerata saw Mr. Shasberg, someone who commanded a significant influence over a young and vibrant sector of the city's population. Mr. Shasberg, for his point, initially mistook the Camerata for an administrative group and was shocked and disappointed to have been located so easily. His famous escape attempts likewise provided unsuccessful in this particular scenario. Nevertheless, more than 80% of individuals who self-identify as fans of Mr. Shasberg's work believe that his disappearance was all part of the stunt. Age 29, male, trickery and comedy, everyone wears a mask, right? Tracer status integrated. Another good skill I use a lot. Load.
They got that loudmouth Tennigan. Figured he retired.
Wave Tennigan. Mr. Wave Tennigan traded the quiet life of a sanctuary vicar to become one of Cloudbank's biggest alternative broadcast personalities for his distinct blend of good-natured mannerisms and incisive social commentary. Straddling the generational boundary between the old guard and the new, Mr. Tennigan offered a canny perspective on the many factors influencing the city's evolution. But during one of the meet and greet events with his listeners, he met a group of individuals who would forever change the course of his life. Arrangements. That evening, after his event drew to a close, Mr. Tennigan met members of a group calling themselves the Camerata. They invited Mr. Tennigan to come see what was really going on in the city, as long as Mr. Tennigan promised not to disclose any facts concerning the existence of the group. Mr. Tennigan outwardly accepted, for his curiosity could not be quenched, but he inwardly refused, for his commitment to his listeners precluded the keeping of any such secrets. First he would meet the Camerata on their terms. Disappearance. As far as anyone knew, Mr. Tennigan took some personal time, as one day his broadcast simply stopped. He had never missed a day of broadcasting in his life, and so his listeners, while disappointed, were very understanding, both happy and concerned for him. A significant majority believed Mr. Tennigan finally took a break, as he often promised he would one day. Since then, Mr. Tennigan's young producer inherited the show, though listenership steadily declined due to bottom out at just 22% of Mr. Tennigan's average. 40 male, awareness and debate, reason cited, big ideas, that's why. Integrated. Help. Civil Rise. a member of the Camerata. Known in elite social circles throughout Cloudbank, Miss Sybil Rise organized many of the city's popular public events, from groundbreaking ceremonies to contemporary festivals. She was everywhere, and yet somehow she made time to lead a second, hidden life as one of the Camerata. Ms. Rise was responsible for gathering information about potential high-value targets, people who could contribute to their cause. She did this job to perfection, drawing no notice, though one target in particular caused her much frustration. The meeting of Red. Miss Rise met Red while putting together a small program for up-and-coming artists, and became infatuated first with Red's music, then with her. According to diary entries, there was something inscrutable and confident about Red that Miss Rise could not explain. However, Miss Rise was frustrated to find that Red grew distant. Through all this, Miss Rise observed the aloofness of one of Red's companions, and decided he must have been insinuating Red against her. Miss Rise thought various ways to rectify this. Recommendations. One night, Miss Rise nominated Red as target for her Camerata colleagues, citing Red's surging popularity in the city and an unusual set of selections. Red could substantially advance the Camerata's agenda, and was not yet so ubiquitous that her sudden disappearance could be sufficiently disguised. Miss Rise promised the Camerata could get to Red at a time when she would be completely alone. Trace data reveals an 85% she falsified this claim. Age 30, female, supervision organization. I love people and integrated. Bounce.
It's Nyla. Everybody said she split after Goldwalk Channel opened up.
Nyla Chen. Background. One would have difficulty finding a more active or outspoken member of the community of Cloudbank's Goldwalk district as Miss Nyla Chen. She allotted more than 66% of her available time on activities such as passing ordinances to improve underdeveloped regions, reaching out to and educating habitual non-voters, or advocating for groups lacking adequate representation. Her motives were very rarely questioned, as her love for the district was in fact sincere, stemming from positive early experiences that grew to become fierce nostalgia. Miss Chen did not have her detractors, however, and this became very clear at the opening she arranged for the Goldwalk Channel. The channel itself. The channel was supposed to be a gallery space of sorts, designed to showcase eclectic works from those pursuing non-standard vocations that traditionally held little share. Instead, Miss Chen found herself accused of stirring unrest by calling attention to the meritless perspectives undeserving of notice. The group accosting her was angry for 17 different reasons in total, including how the channel edged out a competing vote for Metro. Wait, what? Sorry, guys. The group accosting her was angry for 17 different reasons in total, including how the channel edging out a competing vote for a metro station that would have bridged the gap from Goldwalk to neighboring high-rise in one short ride. Miss Chen publicly lost her composure in this particular incident, which would have escalated further if not for several individuals who stood there in her defense. They later offered her support with any such matters in the future. She agreed to meet with them, not realizing who they were. Her disappearance. The Camerata saw in Miss Chen an invaluable moral compass of sorts, someone predominantly driven by philanthropic goals and seeking no personal gains from her actions. The type of perspective that felt was an important counterbalance in comparison to some of those other individuals that they have in mind, whose work was no less significant to the city, but whose intentions were not as planned to see. After her disappearance, those who knew Miss Chen reluctantly came to believe that the channel incident shook her resolve enough to where she decided to go away for a while, to reignite her passions. 34 female, empathy politics. Everyone deserves the best. Trace status integrated. Ping. Senator Yellowford. How many cases must one crack to become the most highly decorated detective in the 18th precinct? Even this, Officer Henton Halliford knew ahead of time, though he never acted prideful about it. Of course, Officer Halliford was no more a detective, he was a forecaster. This was one of the rarest and least understood professions in Cloudbank, though the results spoke for themselves. Officer Halliford possessed an almost uncanny ability to solve any mystery that blew into town, so it was that he became very interested in the reasons why Central Administration quietly decided to take down the northwestern edge of the Goldbrook District until further notice. Investigation. Visually speaking, Officer Jalliford could only do so much until the administration provided sufficient clearance for his own safety. But one of the side effects of Officer Jalliford's talents as a forecaster was his insatiable desire to confirm his hypothesis. So he decided to move forward with his investigation, sensing significant trouble and not wanting to sit idly by rather than do his job. What he discovered in Goldwalk shook Officer Jalliford to his core. He had never seen anything like it, and his hands shook as he prepared his report on the spot, but he ceased transcription when several individuals approached him. He did not expect them either. The disappearance. The Camerata knew Officer Jellifford posed a significant threat, as he was one of the only detectives stubborn or determined enough to refuse to accept the administration's non-committal answers about what was going on in Goldwalk. After considering several ideas that might draw the officer out, the Camerata realized they needed only to be patient with him. After all, a forecaster could only predict what was already planned, and after Officer Jellifford vanished, the 18th Precinct fabricated a palatable explanation for the public. The officer was approaching retirement age, and together they agreed to name a quarter of his home district in his honor. Age 49, male, selection, psychology and deduction, reasons stated, I believe the future can be parsed. Trace stated, integrated. Get.
Bailey Gilland worked admin up in high rise. That's a lot of privileged info.
Bailey Gilland. Background. Miss Bailey Gilland was never one to follow the pack. Due to a variety of social challenges she experienced early on, she grew up to care much more about the past than the future. While this preoccupation at first made her reclusive as a person, in time it flourished as an invaluable skill, which put her at the forefront of a movement to fundamentally rework the city's outdated and incomplete archival system. Then one day, Miss Gilland received a message from her local admin branch, extending her a pre-approved opportunity to be head of the city archives. She accepted on the spot. Consultation. Miss Gilland's propensity to look at and find truth in historic fact patterns made her excel at evaluating possible decisions about the future. She was well regarded for her objectivity and fairness. Any time a new civic initiative was proposed, Miss Gilland could cite relevant historical data that put the initiative into context, and ultimately let those involved move forward with confidence. She became one of the administration's top consultants, so in spite of her demeanor, she was not surprised when she received an invitation to a private banquet in honor of individuals who gave their most to Cloudbank. Disappearance. Miss Gilland's surprise came later when she arrived at the site of the banquet to discover the event was only in her honor, and there was not a banquet hall at all. The Camerata identified Miss Gilland as having a wealth of knowledge about the city's inner workings, and an agreeable, non-confrontational attitude, which gave her success in her professional interactions. Miss Gilland led a very private life and had no significant interests outside of work, so when she failed to show for her duties one day, her colleagues were very troubled, but found no leads to her whereabouts. She never told anyone of the banquet. Age 32, gender unknown, or X. Selections, acquisition, and statistics. Reasons cited to shape the present and the past. Trace status integrated. Purge, another one of my favorites. Maximilius Darcy. Background. Not everyone wears the Darcy brand. However, 2 years ago, more than 56% of individuals between ages of 16 and 42 showed interest in or complimented someone wearing Mr. Maximilius Darcy's clothing. The self-styled Cloudbank clothier became a fashion icon in his early 20s when he introduced to the world a garment line that could boldly intrude formal tradition. Not only that, so prolific was his work that seemingly everyone in Cloudbank, in reality it was only 8% of the population at the time, found garments that spoke to them as individuals. In spite of this, all was not well in Mr. Darcy's life. Dependencies. In private, Mr. Darcy suffered from certain dependencies he believed were the source of his talent, or rather, the source of his inspiration. Unfortunately, he was correct in his assessment when he decided to come forward and wean himself from these dependencies. After initial public outpouring of support, his career started to falter. His ideas came less quickly, or he could not act on them as quickly, and so against the wishes of his closest confidant and partner, he resumed his old habits. It was then that Mr. Darcy met certain individuals professing knowledge of his condition and invited him to participate in an experiment that could cure him without compromise. Believing he had little to lose, Mr. Darcy decided it was worth a shot. It may seem mundane for the Camerata to take interest in a man like Mr. Darcy, yet from the Camerata's perspective he was perfect. He was someone with the capacity to sway thousands in a subtle way, and whose career appeared to be waning. The public would steadily accept that such a man publicly disgraced would decide to head into the country away from the bustle of city life. And indeed, the public took this news at face value, all but Mr. Darcy's confidant, whom the Camerata dealt with separately, who we've already read about. Age 31, male, selections, design and aesthetics, reasons cited, pursuit of beauty, trace status integrated. Void.
Asher Kendrell stood for the Camerata's cause to the bitter end.
Asher Kendrell. Most children learn to stop asking why, but Mr. Asher Kendrell never outgrew it. His hunger for knowledge and his eagerness to spread it made him a prolific writer who enjoyed a career as a culture and current events editor for OVC. When Mr. Kendrell wasn't busy reporting, he preoccupied himself studying the history of the city. But the deeper he delved, the more frustrated he became with all the dead ends and contradictions. The facts simply did not add up, so he started piecing together the unwritten history of Cloudbank. He conducted interviews with venerable members of society, those who willingly worked past retirement age or could speak firsthand about the past. The most remarkable among them was an administrator. Secrets. Mr. Kendrill was struck by the administrator's wisdom and depth of experience, and the two shared a passion for seeking the truth of things, and for much more as it turned out. One day, the administrator took Mr. Kendrill aside to a place unlike any he'd seen before, and revealed to him something he never could have imagined. With it, the administrator said together they could learn so much, about the past and about the future, as long as Mr. Kendrill was willing to keep it a secret. Mr. Kendrill accepted without a second thought. The administrator was much more to him than just a source at his point. Goals. Mr. Kendrill continued writing for OVC, now with an ulterior motive. Having joined the administrator's inner circle, the administrator needed someone like Asher to help keep a low profile, someone who could speak directly to the hearts and minds of the population and truly understand their needs. That way, they could conduct their work in service of the people. Cloudbank would enter a new era. 28 male, selections, writing, valuation, reason cited, self-expression, trace status, recorded. Flood. Royce Brackett. Once there was a great engineer. Arithmetic was his medium and a city was his canvas. He planned the roads, buildings, and byways. He could not be more precise. Like everyone in Cloudbank, he served at the pleasure of the city's people. The cities changed quickly and often, reconfiguring to best suit the contemporary sensibility. Thus, the engineer's work was ephemeral. He loved his craft, but could not let himself become attached to the product of his efforts. Findings. Because the engineer's work was never done, it stayed fresh. With new whims came new challenges. Bridges, gardens, towers, ports. None of it lasted very long. The nature of his work led him to notice certain patterns over time. The will of the people changed in cycles. Bridges would come down in favor of railways, railways would give way to parks, new bridges would then be built upon the parks, and so on. Recognizing this, the engineer started fashioning avant-garde structures and designs he believed would persist beyond the immediate urges of the population. Yet these ideas proved much less popular, and before much longer he became obscure, and left his job to pursue personal interests on his own. It was then he discovered a formula visualizing exactly how the structures of Cloudbank were formed. Travels. He studied this formula closely, for it filled him with a deep sense of wonder, an ever deeper sense of dread. He developed predictive algorithms to determine whether, where, and when the visualization would take form, and began drawing it out with his own architectural plans, until one day he found it in its natural state. He saw beyond the confines of the city into something more, and there before him was something extraordinary. He took it, and realized the things he now stood at his core. 37 male, engineering and mathematics, reason cited decline, trace status, recorded. Tap.
Grant Kendrill's rooftop hideout back in high-rise. That was for damage control. He wanted to save people.
Grant Kendrill. Background. More than 94% of voting adults in Cloudbank agree that the administration is necessary to the city's infrastructure and its continued day-to-day operations. A similar percentage also want no part of administrative responsibilities other than to exercise one's personal right to vote on or otherwise contribute to pertinent social issues. Most administrators like it this way. In the long-standing tradition of their role, they endeavor to keep things running quietly and smoothly, intervening as little as possible whilst facilitating as much as possible. As public servants, administrators are beholden to their constituencies through this time-honored system. It is a system that Administrator Grant Kendrill decided to subvert. Administrator Kendrill was one of the longest tenured public servants in the administration's recorded history. More than 2 younger generations of administrators came and went as he remained on the job. His abilities as a judicious and short-mannered administrator never folded as his age advanced, so instead, his constituency respected him for him only grew. By contrast, Administrator Kendrill found his own feelings beginning to change. It was a period of personal crisis, a time when lesser men would have retired, but Administrator Kendrill took it all in his stride as far as anybody knew. By now, he had realized he had fought for virtually every social position at one time or another, always pleasing the majority. Over time, this left a hollow feeling in his heart. He had his own position on many matters, his own dreams and desires, but he had learned to keep those thoughts in check. Then a long-time friend of his, with whom he often confided his worldview over food and drink, gave Administrator Kendrill an idea he'd never dared considered. The Camerata. The Camerata was just the 2 of them at first, and its ranks were never meant to exceed a number to be counted on one hand. They encapsulated their beliefs in an expression that when everything changes, nothing changes, and they had in their possession something that would move their mission forward. Administrator Kendrill, ever familiar with the solemn burden of responsibility, knew more about the administration than anyone. If anyone knew what was best for Cloudbank, it was him. Age 55, male, selections, civics and judgment, reason cited, Cloudbank, of course. Switch. Farah Yondale. Background. She was Cloudbank's first ever sky painter. Someone who took the everyday occasion of the ever-changing sky and made an art of it. She worked for the pleasure of thousands who remembered that they once took the sky for granted. Miss Yondale gained a significant following as she transformed the skies around the city, and as her skill and popularity grew side by side, she started taking requests. One such request came from her heart. She was drawn to the district of Goldwalk where her suitor lived, and there she would change the horizon to a shimmering sapphire for the solstice, and for their and everyone's sake, this is when her art became a liability. Solstice. Administrative restrictions over the northwestern part of Goldwick conflicted with the breadth of the sky they needed painting. Because of her psychological state, however, Miss Yondale disregarded the restrictions and painted anyway. The result was stunning, as the majority of onlookers failed to find words to describe it, but Miss Yondale wantonly ignored a front-page directive from administration. She was banned from sky painting for a term 2.5 times longer than she found acceptable. She petitioned for a reprieve, and she came in contact with an administrator who suggested that there were ways the term could be lightened. She was eager to learn how. Disappearance. Miss Yondale's gifted command over a dimension of the city's physical and natural beauty caused the Camerata to seek her out. While aspects of the city involved at a constant rate, the particular way in which Miss Yondale approached her craft, with a strong discerning, intuitive sense, but with an eye for the wishes of her followers, created a particular disposition that appealed in the Camerata. After she vanished, close to 70% of Miss Yondale's connections decided she must have fled to the district to escape sentencing, and that somewhere out there over the skies still sparkle with the patterns of her choosing. 26. Female. Meteorology and chemistry. Sky looks blue because we want it to. Integrated. Cull. Olmark. Very few are so well cut out for professional athletics as Olmark, who famously corrected reporters any time they addressed him using honorifics. As a rookie player from the high-rise Hammers, Olmark was a second-string quarter fielder until a chance injury put the team star out of commission, giving Olmark his chance to shine. Any skepticism surrounding his qualifications quickly dissolved as he proceeded to lead the Hammers to a crushing 17-2 season, but the following season proved an even greater surprise. Cursed. Olmark gained a reputation for dramatic yet reckless plays. He was strong especially for someone of his age and stature, which not only led to significant victories, but also to many injuries on the field. Rival fans started calling him the Cursed QF, for he inflicted some sort of injury to opposing team members in almost every match. This spurred controversy as to whether Olmark was acting with intent or without control, and both possibilities were troubling. Moreover, the league sought new safety regulations affecting the pace and spirit of the sport, for which Olmark felt personally responsible. After one grueling match, a reporter asked him what he made of his notoriety. Olmark admitted that he was considering retirement. Soon after, an administrator he met after a high-profile win offered to help him make a comfortable arrangement. Disappearance. To the Camerata, Olmark was a way of hedging the portfolio in the sense that his talents and selections differed significantly from others they sought. At the same time, he was by every means unique as an individual, and his physical conditioning provided a useful data point. The Camerata reasoned that for Olmark to go away would ultimately be for his own good. Indeed, following his reported retirement, his career was celebrated, his transgressions quickly overlooked or forgotten. Age 22, male, strength and concentration. What's life without a little risk? Integrated. And that is the 16 functions in the Transistor. Now the enemies, the process. Designation bad cell. The cells, they spoil like anything that spoils, except instead of spoiling, they have become something else. Something they don't seem to want to be. This is no conversion, but a total metamorphosis. It cannot be reversed as far as I can tell. Once the cell has shifted to this form, then all that remains is for it to expel its stored potential, like a last breath, back into the ether, I suppose, some form of self-defense. Royce. Role, to be recycled. Features pellet blaster, bus shockwave. Vulnerabilities, unarmored frame, cannot detect cover. Preferences, cool dark places, early termination. Designation jerk. Wouldn't want to agitate this particular specimen, would strongly advise against any such thing. Do not disturb, although it is quite docile really. Not easily disturbed, but not to be distributed. Its large frame suggests to me it is an older form, less efficient, less capable in some ways, though specialized. Specialized like all the rest. It wouldn't still be around if it didn't have its uses. And just, you look at it, you can guess what it's for, I'm sure. You need a good plot of land to build upon. Why? Here's the process you ought to call. Royce. Role, paver. Features piston flatteners, overdrive system, and a grapple shot in some versions. No known vulnerabilities. Preferences to pulverizing and absorption. Designation young lady. Most embarrassing, though I must admit I can't explain this one's rather conspicuous appearance. Specifically its resemblance to the body of a woman. Now, mathematically, there is a chance that this is coincidental. There is always a chance, but I find that hard to believe, and rather I suspect the process is taking a bit of liking to us, started taking on some of our quirks, like how one might subconsciously assume the mannerisms of a friend. At any rate, this one is very unusual, very much so, and rather temperamental too, so I've yet to gain a sense for all her intricacies. Royce. Role, Supervisor. Features, Fragmentation Beam, Cell Incubator, and Self-Copy System. Vulnerabilities, High-Yield Functions. Preference, Consonant Noise, People. Designation, Weed. The ground is positively teeming with these little numbers, isn't it now? They spread while underground of this, I'm certain. The exact method of reproduction, though I don't exactly understand, it isn't. Well, it must be getting so crowded down there that once in a while one of them decides it's time to poke his head up for a look up ground. It's this primordial form of some sort, from which all others come to pass. The others tend to turn to these as though for guidance, despite how simple they appear to be. Requires further study. Royce. Role, Supplier. Features restorative aura, defensive aura. Vulnerabilities, immobile, cannot self-restore. Preferences, borrowing and sterile ground. Designation, Cheerleader. Now these little fellows are quite remarkable really, and I believe are key to how the process is able to construct or destruct as the case may be. Whatever they set their sights on, why it becomes impervious really, as though encased in thick glass. This way the process can just build and build and build, clean and happy, no distracting to surrounding environs. No need for pardon our dust or something like that. It all gets done in a hurry, but not in a rush. Not in a rush. The work is immaculate. Role, Maintenance. Features shield beam, reinforced shell, power charger in some models. Vulnerabilities, unarmed. Preference, high traffic areas, sunset. Designation, Clucker. This one is rather inconspicuous, even nonchalant, so very timid in its disposition, though its appendages, that is to say its legs, they'll need a closer look. Why are they not rigid, fleshy almost, appearing natural in shape and texture, which strikes me as very odd. The process, it is a big on self-improvement, that I know, but I do not know if copying the way we mill about, the way we wander, I don't know if that qualifies. In any case, this is a newer model, has to be, able to reverse denser environments undetected, and quite literally lead the way for its associates. It is a bit like an explorer. Rice. Role, Ranger. Features ballistic launcher, all-terrain locomotion, disruption systems in some models. Vulnerabilities, far-sighted rangefinders. Preferences, biped emulation, shooting contests. Designation, Creep. Busy, 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 aren't they? With their feet all feelers maybe, all cluttering about, very hard-working, diligent, dignified even, despite menial role within process hierarchy, through hierarchy, that is not quite right, more like union. Most respectable, a pair of these, they often work in pairs, can wipe out a small house in an hour or two if sufficiently impelled. Then the others in the family, they all come on in to make way for something new, something different, often something better than before. Royce. Role, Custodian. Features cutting beam and all-terrain movement. Vulnerabilities, exposed cell in the rear, requires line of sight. Preferences, scentlessness, hard pavement. Designation, Snapshot. Spent many, many hours staring into the unblinking eyes, rather calming really. The process keeps meticulous records, very responsible, and this is the sort of their bookkeeper, near as I can tell. Now I can't make heads or tails of those records yet, but they are timestamps. They have to be timestamps, which is how I know in any case the sense of feeling monitored constantly, while troubling at first, I find with time it fades. Royce. Role, Reporting. Features, flash lens, reflex booster, and data scramblers in some versions. Vulnerabilities, exposed cell in the rear. Preferences, high dynamic range lighting. Designation, Fetch. First signs of aggression I've seen from the process. Real aggression I mean. All of them are a bit temperamental really, but this? Need to keep a healthy distance. Develop disincentives. Make the terms of the relationship abundantly clear. I don't yet know what to make of this. What is the process trying to protect itself from with planning something like this? Me. At any rate, it's plain this form came to be for something other than solving the city's problems. But when? Why? And how is it able to disappear completely, despite all we've done to draw it out? We'll come back to this. Royce. Role, Guardian. Features, sleek form factor, tracking sensor, and paralysis wave in some models. Vulnerabilities, ineffective at range. Preferences, cylindrical objects, simple games. Finally, Man. Designation, Man. The process, I believe, it is beginning to take on certain characteristics of its environment. Its environment in this case consisting of yours truly, I suppose, and my associates. One of the others, who shall be left nameless, suggested this might be a form of tribute, like a living sculpture. But he or she does not know what he or she is talking about, and I fear something else is going on here. Something rather troubling. Precaution precaution thing, but I've implemented a number of interlocking safety limiters that should keep the process well in line, for just in case. You can never be too sure. Royce. Role, Assoit, features, summon seekers, stronger near friends, recovery systems and a phasing system on some models. Vulnerabilities unknown. Preferences unknown. And that, guys, is the kind of flavor text and lore in Transistor. There's a few guys I need to make, but obviously this one will run a bit long, as it's just me talking and reading. But I hope you enjoyed learning a bit more about the Transistor world, both in terms of kind of the characters within the Transistor blade itself, as well as something I don't think many people do is get the information from the limiters. So that's all there in one video for you guys. Again, it'll just be a bonus episode to tack on with the finale. So I hope you've enjoyed the series as always, and yeah, I look forward to seeing you in the next playthrough. So I'll see you guys later. Bye.